I'm going to start with, for the new people, the brief overview of what is energy healing, followed by 3 minutes of silence, followed by a little recap from yesterday, and then dive into today's session. And our topic today is New Year's Manifestation Workshop. So that means exercises and things we can do. Anyway, it's good to be with you all. And we'll go ahead and start with what is energy healing. Energy healing. Energy healing is a process where you learn to work with your consciousness in this gap, and my picture represents the source of creation and the manifest field of creation. So you learn to use your consciousness in the gap between the unmanifest ocean of being and the manifest field of creation, and how to move consciousness in a really delicate, really tender way in this gap that promotes specific changes through the field of creation. That's what energy healing is. And the healing part comes in because usually people come to energy healing because they have some physiological issue that they're dealing with, or sometimes just something in their life that's not quite right. And their intention is to change that and to do it from its root, to do it from the source. And that's where the roots are. They're way down there in that point between where the infinite, eternal, unbounded, unmanifest ocean of being starts to show up. It starts to diversify, starts to quit looking like one and starts to look like many. And right at that point where it starts to break apart, the seeds of manifestation are sown. So energy healing is, as I'm offering it to you, is a process of bringing awareness down into this gap area and working with the baby beginnings. It's like with the baby part of 2022, the baby beginnings of whatever is to come. And if there's something that's not quite right at the surface, then we can use that. We can leverage the part that's not lined up with your vision for your potential and what could be happening for you better, right? So we take that symptom at the surface and we use it, we leverage that whatever it is, specifically to help create a form down here at the subtle, which aligns much better with your intention for how you could be living your life or how you could feel physically or how things work out for you. Okay, so that's energy healing in a nutshell. If we need more details on that, I will interject them as we go along. We're now going to go into 3 minutes of silence. And the reason we do that is to give ourselves 3 minutes, to settle the awareness down and to feel what's going on down at that deep level of creation. Just innocently, just closing the eyes and just feeling what's going on inside. That's the first step. It's like learning to swim. First, you just get in the water. So we're just going to close the eyes and enjoy some silence for 3 minutes. When I ask you to open the eyes, please take a few minutes and then open the eyes slowly, a minute or so anyway, at least a minute, to open the eyes slowly, because coming out of the silence more gradually helps to integrate it. All right, we're just about ready. I'm going to mute my computer here and let's close our eyes. All right. Let's take a minute and then slowly open the eyes. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything, for being all of us here and the universe around all of us, all our world, all our creation, all our universe. Thank you to the eternal tradition of wisdom, which is the bridge that connects the unbounded, unmanifest, eternal ocean of silent being to the entire manifest field of creation. Without that bridge, we'd be anchorless. So grateful for the anchor. Thank you for our hour together, and may this webinar be powerful and amazing and fulfilling to everyone. May it provide all that you had hoped you would get from this workshop and more. May it meet and exceed your hopes and expectations and desires and wishes for the fulfillment of knowledge on the manifesting process. I am so, so grateful to be with each one of you. Thank you for being here, for being with me, and for this time that we have together. It's very exciting. So we seem to have cleared out all of the technical problems from yesterday, God bless. And I'm now going to go into a brief review of yesterday's session and share that I shared exercise for creating wealth. So anybody who's here today thinking, oh, well, one thing I'd like to create in 2022 is more wealth, be sure to check out yesterday's session, because there is a lovely exercise there. Plus, we will be putting links for written description of the exercise and so forth in the email that comes out to you with the recordings of these two live webinars. I wanted to bring in, though, so many really seriously, mind-blowingly wonderful questions came in. So I'm going to, as often I do, start today's session with some questions. And one of them specifically refers to that exercise. And one lady said that last night when I was offering the exercise, she said, well, she did the exercise between 2018 and 2019, and she didn't really feel like it did anything. But then today she emailed in and she said, so last night she decided to look through her check register for 2018, 2019, and she actually found that many things that she had listed as payments had actually happened. Debts were resolved, her house improvements got done, certain career plans became fulfilled, and she was able to make many donations to some of her favorite causes. So she said that she felt sad that she had said that she didn't think that the exercise did anything, but I'm grateful to her for that, because by playing devil's advocate, essentially, and she knows that I adore her beyond measure, and I am more than receptive to people offering me suggestions and ideas, and no, that doesn't work, and things like that. God bless you. God bless you, because that is how we as a collective dig deeper. And that's exactly what happened. That because her question or her comment last night came up like, oh, well, I did that exercise and it didn't work. Because her question came up, I was able to bring out more refinements and details on the exercise that aren't going to, you probably won't find in the link coming up, although I should probably add them. And yeah, details about how to practice it so that you get even more success. And on that note, and as part of the recap from yesterday, one of the points that came out that was really interesting to me was that the manifestation process occurs a lot of times in these layers, these sequential layers. And so I was thinking about that overnight and this morning, and one of the ideas that came up, or one of the understandings that sort of emerged from that was that I talked about how these impulses of intelligence come from the source of creation like that. And then this wave of expression rises up through the manifest field of creation, and it makes its way up to the surface of creation. And what I realized is when we're doing things like the exercise that I shared with you yesterday, where you do it it's a repeated exercise that you do, for instance, once a day, that what happens is the impulse rises up and it may meet with some resistance, and so it'll flop back down before it gets up to the surface and fully manifests. And then the next time you practice it, you've kind of softened up this area of the field of consciousness by doing the exercise once. And so you go to do it a second time. And what happens is the expression of fulfillment, or the manifestation of the intention, it rises up a little higher like that. But it may, again, meet with resistance, and so it flops back down. Why does it meet with resistance? Because anything that we're intending to manifest all the way out to the surface of creation means that whatever that thing is going to have to find a place in our universe. So it's like having a new kid come to the classroom. When the new kid comes in, everybody's got to find a desk for that person and kind of scooch around. There's some scooching around that has to happen with the other kids in order to accommodate that new person in the classroom. And there's a spectrum of different kinds of things that we can manifest. We also talked a little bit about that yesterday, about kind of going for those desires, going after those desires that sort of contain other desires within them. But what I wanted to say about this spectrum of desire is that some things are just more probable than others, right? Like, I'd like to manifest a blue sky. Well, I live in Phoenix right now, and I think Phoenix may have more blue skies than anywhere else in the world. Is it the world, or at least the US? It's like famous for like more days of blue sky. So manifesting a blue sky in Phoenix is kind of like no big deal. That was kind of going to happen anyway. So it's like the rest of the universe didn't have to shuffle around too much to get that blue sky going here in Phoenix, whereas some things are far less probable. And one of the reasons that we're doing this manifestation webinar is because we want to gain access over those laws of nature that allow us to manifest things that are less probable. For instance, if you're dealing with some physical ailment of some kind, and it's been going on for some time, what's happened is all the kids in the classroom have modified around and adjusted to accommodate something going not quite right in the system. And to undo that and to bring the body back into full health means that everything has to readjust again at the material level. So it takes a little bit more. It requires the building of structure a little more meticulously, intentionally, and as we were talking about yesterday, it can be a little bit more slowly, because you want to like soften the ground, right? And get kind of everything in line in these deeper levels of reality and of creation that don't actually show the material effect. So we get basically like getting the ducks in line. So the intention comes up and it manifests first like at a fine level down here. And all those ducks line up, and then it comes and it manifests at this level. Next time you do the exercise, and then all these ducks line up. You get the picture. You do the exercise again, and you get all the ducks lined up in this area. You do the exercise again, you get all the ducks lined up in this area, and eventually you're able to do there's a point where you do the exercise where you bridge the gap between the exercise being something that's experienced on a virtual level and something where there are actually concrete effects that show up at the surface. And I can tell you from having practiced this on highly improbable manifestations, because I've been doing that for quite some time now, many years, that what can often happen if something's really very highly improbable is that when it first breaks the surface and shows up, it may show up as a miniature version of the thing that you're trying to manifest. So you might be trying to manifest something really big, and what you end up getting is something that manifests it kind of like shows its nose, and then it goes back down again like that. All right. Yes, so that was the lady from yesterday, absolutely beloved, and I'm grateful that we are such good friends, that she feels comfortable and confident in the webinar setting to go, now wait a minute, no. So sweet. I'm so grateful. Yeah, we go into deeper and deeper levels all the time. Okay, I'm just going to go straight into questions here for today because there are quite a lot of them. And I would think I want to go to this question next. I'm deciding which one, but I think a lady sent in 6 questions, and each one of them is just really stellar. So I think we're going to go here. So because she's digging deep with her intellect, and she's finding exactly that point, that part that's critical. And I think, yes, these will bring out the deeper knowledge and the deeper understanding. So her first question is, what initiates the expansion from the absolute, right? What initiates that flow of creative intelligence? Is it out of our control? Is everything decided by the absolute for cosmic evolution? So the first answer, the first part of the question is the unmanifest, unbounded field of creation is constantly sort of like spewing forth like a fountainhead of all the fundamentals of the material creation. And we know it's pretty vast. It's a pretty big material creation. So you can imagine this infinite, unbounded, eternal field is just like, it's like a fountain just going off all the time, flowing and flowing and flowing like that. So we can say what initiates it, and dynamics that take place within the field itself. It's folding in on its own eternal nature. There's one aspect of its nature which is like in a state of total rest, and there's another aspect of its nature which is kind of like puffed up, like plumped up and ready to burst forward. So there are these 2 parts that are down here in this field of infinite, unbounded, eternal silence. And what they're doing is they're interacting with each other, and there's a little wave that's going on between them. And this wave creates the first division in the one. So the one starts to divide into multiple. And the first division is it wakes up to its own nature. And this ocean of pure consciousness, pure being, pure knowingness, realizes it knows itself. And so when knowingness knows itself, it realizes that it is knowingness. So it becomes, this division occurs. And the division is the knower, the known, and the process of knowing. And all of them are recognized at that moment as knowingness. And so there's this thing that's happening down here, which is kind of like, it's kind of like a brain explosion a little bit. Like we experience it sort of like a brain explosion. It's like, I'm one. Oh, but I've divided into 3, but all 3 are the one. But I'm one. But I've divided into 3, but all 3 are the one. And it's like going back and forth, like, but how do I reconcile? How do I reconcile? Something like that. And it's a constant state of reconciliation that's taking place deep within the field of unbounded, unmanifest being. And out of that, then evolves the sounds that express that. They express that dynamic. And I've talked about these in other webinars, so I can't remember which ones, and I doubt that we uploaded them as individual segments on YouTube. But the first sound is completely because when you open up you get unbounded, infinite, eternal nature, right? And then, anyway, a lot of you guys know this talk, so I'm not going to go too deeply into it. But of course, if you express unbounded, eternal nature as a sound, you have literally collapsed infinity into a sound, which means the next thing that happens is the collapse. And then everything, absolutely everything closes. Or like that. And of course, what happens, it's like it creates a commentary on itself. So the next sound that comes out expresses the fact that you took unboundedness, you collapsed it into a sound, and that was actually a collapsing, which is everything closed, And then that means that it was negated, right? So then the N sound comes out because the N is the negation sound. Agn, akn. And so then what does that mean? Well, then action took place. Something happened, some transformation occurred. So the next sound that comes out is the energy sound, which is E. And E is interesting because it's an ah, but it's a modified ah, right? Like the consonants are complete closes, t, k, g, they like complete close. But all the vowel sounds are like modified forms of ah. So what it means is that the wholeness modified a little bit to become active, agni, agni, right? So that the sound it starts to come out as sequential. And of course, the last sound of that word is which is the hum of the universe, because the entire humming universe emerges from agnim, agnim. Anyway, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And so I need to upload a video about that probably at some point or another, but these are the mechanics. So what initiates expansion from the absolute for manifestation? Agnim. Agnim. Also, there is, we talked a lot last night about energy signatures, because those are like the seeds of manifestation that sit down here in the gap. And there is a specific energy signature that is for the manifestation of the whole universe. And that is Narayana. Narayana. Narayana sits at the point down here. So, okay, so I said there's the resting on its own nature, and there's like the plumped up value of its own nature. But where does it come across this gap? How does it get across the gap from being like folded in on itself and like it's like down there kind of self-interacting, right? So what happens? Narayana does it. And again, we can analyze. Na means that the one is beginning to negate into the diversified field. So na, but it's na. So the negation folds back into wholeness. And then ra is also another way of expressing the hum of the universe. It's the spiraling, spinning, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth thing that happens both down deep in the wholeness, and also it happens here at this point. So na, so the negation and the unboundedness work together to give rise to a rolling form of negation, unboundedness, back and forth. Na, ra. Ya. Ya is actually E and A together. It's a diphthong, right? Ya is ya. Ya. So we've got the action and the unboundedness together. So na, negation and unboundedness together. Ra, the rolling of unboundedness and negation and unboundedness together again, gives rise to ya, which is the action form. And then it ends with na. Na, ra, ya, na. And the last na pushes it all the way into the field of separation and unboundedness. So Narayana, or Narayana, if you want to say it simply, is the combination of sounds that expresses the seed form of the entire manifestation. It sits at that point. Woo! See what a good question? We got deep into Vedic science there. That's yummy stuff. Is it out of our control? No, it's not out of our control, because we can speak it, right? And I mean, part of gaining control over things is learning how to define it. So no, we can do this because our awareness, human nervous system, has the capability of experiencing life at the surface of creation, but also diving in, and getting down into this very deep level of creation and swimming down here in the ocean, swimming in the ocean of wholeness. So no, it's not out of our control. We participate in that. In fact, we are that, because nothing that exists in creation is not out of that. That is all that is. And we are absolutely not only a part of it, but we're like a really critical, really important part, which I did cover a bit yesterday, which is we sit at this point at the surface when the impulse of intelligence has reached its way all the way up to the surface and gives us a chance to explore the dynamics, the laws of nature that exist up here at the surface. And support the underlying intention for why all this is happening. Why does the unbounded ocean of consciousness come up and manifest as our universe and then go back to itself again and fold in on itself? We're here to dive deeply into those mechanics and to understand them. And that's what we're doing in our webinar. And that's what we're doing in the healing process. And we will continue doing, and I will continue to support you. Is everything decided by the absolute for cosmic evolution? Yes, everything is for cosmic evolution, but we are participating in that. We are the expression of cosmic evolution as human beings. Good questions. If we live as the absolute, does manifestation happen for the highest good without having personal desires? No, personal desires are the desires of the absolute. It's a great question. I asked this question, I remember when I was about 20 and I had first moved away from my hometown and gone to live, in this beautiful Fairfield, Iowa, where I was living with a lot of other people who were a lot more seeped in this Vedic knowledge than I was. And so I remember asking that of this absolutely fabulous woman that I knew there. And she said, her answer still holds really true for today. And that is that our individual personal desires draw us into those situations and circumstances that are most powerful for our evolution. So they help fuel the evolutionary process. And there's absolutely a give and take. There is such an incredible give and take between this very fine level of creation and this very gross material level of creation. And, when we talk to the universe with like every action, every desire that we have, everything we do is a way of interacting energetically with our universe. So if you have a desire that you feel is unfulfilled, know that desire is already existing down here at some level of this manifesting process. And the way to help bring it up is to get more in tune with the seed form of it, the initial aspect of it. We experience this, a download for everyone. This is a download for how to follow the threads of intention from a desire down to the seed of the desire. What's really the real essential form of that desire? What does that look like? What does it feel like? How does it resonate in you, and how does it change your nervous system to have that resonation going on inside of you? What does it do to the nervous system, and what are the motivations? And yesterday we talked a lot about motivations between like long-term goals versus short-term. So this download for everyone. Just how do I start with I'm thinking of the desire, how do I get down to its seed? How do I get down to that yummy initial form? Why that vision, that beautiful. It's more important. How our desires affect our evolution is very much more important than the manifestation of that actual desire itself. So as long as the desire is affecting the nervous system and affecting the being in a way that is aligned with your highest good and cosmic evolution, then it garners support from the laws of nature to come to the surface. And so if you've got a big desire that's improbable to fulfill, and you're going in again, what you're doing is you're actually refining your own nervous system with each loop. And you are activating and awakening specific laws of nature in yourself and in your environment that will help support the evolution of the whole cosmos. So it's kind of like any desire that requires this repeated thing It's like it aligns, it aligns, it aligns, it aligns. It continues aligning between the individual and the environment. It's very beautiful. And the environment will talk to you. If the environment has objections to the desire, the environment will let you know. And then you can go deep into that part. You can take that symptom and go deep into that and like, but what is needed? If ego initiates a desire, it follows the same evolution, expansion, purification, integration, which we talked about yesterday. These three values of evolution: expansion, purification, integration. How do we influence each stage so we can move through them quickly? The influence is for the nervous system, because we are so blessed as human beings. We have these physical human nervous systems, and it's the physical. I was saying how they talk to each other. The surface talks to the subtle, and there's a conversation back and forth. So that's why individual desire is really important, because it does have an influence when the impulse reaches the surface and then it folds back in. What is the desire at the surface will come in with that inward stroke of awareness, and it will influence the way the impulse comes back into totality, and it tickles the field of the ocean of wholeness. We tickle the ocean of wholeness every time there's a resolution of the loop. Every resolution is, and we have that experience, right, as humans, because of our nervous systems. Anytime we have the resolution of a desire or anything, the resolution of anything, you get a dopaminergic flush. You get bliss. So the same. So the unbounded ocean of consciousness has something like a dopaminergic flush. I mean, maybe the mechanics aren't exactly the same, but it's creating this universe. It's creating it, and it's getting something out of that. So however it's experienced for the absolute, this reply, this call and reply format of the manifest field of creation gives rise to some resolution for totality. Let's see. Go through them quickly. So it works more quickly the more refined the nervous system is. The more refined the nervous system, the more quickly. And that's why yesterday I was talking a little bit about why it's good to choose a very high desire, and that the focus is to be with the evolutionary process. And when you're not busy with the evolutionary process, to be resting up, to become busy with the evolutionary process. Because everything we do leaves impressions on the nervous system, and the nervous system grows and evolves and forms itself around that doing. And it's those individuals who have the greatest ritam, and we've talked about ritam in the past. That's another one that could go up, Tom. I'm thinking as my husband over there, as a video for YouTube. And I've done several videos about that. So, I mean, I've done several recordings about that during workshops and webinars. So we won't worry too much about that today, but ritam basically is a Sanskrit word that means the ability to manifest anything instantly. Ritam bara pragyam. Ritam bara pragyam is the ability to go, and then it's manifested, whatever it is that you want to manifest. There's a word for that in Sanskrit, because that's a thing. That's a thing in that tradition. May you all, R-I-T-A-M, just like it sounds. R is the, right? And then ta is the point where it comes right to the surface. Rita, and I've already talked about and right? Because the is wholeness. So becomes the hum of the universe. And it goes again, 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 again. It starts with the hum and it ends with the hum, right? But it starts with the hum delineated and defined. And it ends with the hum Like more abstract, not defined. But that means consistent, so that like everything eases into it. Like once the kid gets to the classroom and everybody's found their seat and it's groovy. All right. So if ego initiates a desire, it follows the same evolution. Yes, it does follow the same evolution. How do we influence each stage? We orient our desires in a way that whatever we're striving towards and whatever we're doing is always having a refining effect on the nervous system. There's a whole science right back there. There's a whole science to that. We would have to do that as another webinar. Could be a good webinar idea. All right. Can you use a health example? Yes, and for that, I think I have somebody who had a question about health that I wanted to look at. Yes, so she's the next, or this would be her fourth question, is can we use a health example? I'm using your questions a lot because they were really fantastic. Actually, what I'm going to do is the other two are quick. So I'll do them and then we'll go into the other lady's question that was a health question. So how does one let go in the purification phase to move into the integration? That's where I think the ego actually comes in a bit more. We talked about this a little bit more extensively yesterday, which is because the purification is more prevalent up here at the surface level of creation, the tendency is to identify with the purification process. And the lady who said, oh, the exercise didn't work, and then she came back today and went, oh, wait a minute, it did work. She was saying that too, that all her life she'd been so she was saying that she realized that her life's focus has been on the purification process. And I think that a lot of people who are on like a really deep spiritual path will do that. They will associate the spiritual process or the process of refining and integrating the nervous system with purification exclusively. But actually, the other aspects of expansion and integration are important for refinement of the nervous system as well. And if we're only on purification, if we're on purification alone, I'm not saying that she's that this lady did this, but back in like the Middle Ages, the monks, they had their things. They would hit themselves. Because they were, they were constantly trying to just be in that place where, it's the purification part it's the difficult part of the process. So yeah, she was saying that she realized from the work that we did yesterday that it became more integrated. So I'm just going to look into the collective now, to our collective, and we'll see, because it is a natural tendency to associate refinement and purification of the purification, refinement and integration of the nervous system with purification. And so sometimes when people become very excited about the evolutionary process, they'll go, okay, then we're just going to purify. And I did that. Oh yeah, thank you. It was called is it flagellation or flagellation probably? Flagellation probably. Yeah, thank you. I was a little hesitant to flagellation. I was a little hesitant to say the word because I wasn't sure how to pronounce it, but yes, yeah, self-flagellation. Anyway, we still do that. A lot of people do that today. I mean, they don't walk around with sticks hitting themselves, but they, a lot of people are just like, well, I'm just going to purify and purify and purify. I'm just going to be on the purification side of that. So we need to do some healing to help balance those three values. It is the purification, and especially the integration, that brings us to that place of resolution that feels really good and that makes the whole process easier and comfortable and well worth it. Well worth it. This healing is oriented toward, and it ties right into the next lady's question, the one who had the question about health. It's oriented toward this cultivation of the autonomic nervous system. Very sweet, because it's in the autonomic nervous system that the structures that regulate and also recognize and appreciate, like our awareness wakes up to the expansion and the purification and the integration sides of the evolutionary process. All three are seen expressed in the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic side of the autonomic nervous system is all about the outward stroke, right? Toward the relative, action-oriented. And the integration side is for parasympathetic nervous system. And the purification is more at the top of the cycle. For those who might be coming into this a little bit late, the ocean down here represents the source of creation, the unmanifest, eternal, whole, qualityless fountainhead of all that exists. And the manifest field of creation is represented by the sky. That's why I keep pointing to it. And there are different laws of nature that are prevalent at different points along this manifestation process, or along the spectrum of density, we could say, very unmanifest down here, and then very concrete at the top. And the purification occurs in like the upper portion of this cycle. So most dynamically, it appears at the upper portion of the cycle. Why? Because it's at the upper portion of the cycle where the field of creation expresses itself, that we get the most dynamic contrast between like darkness and light, for example. It's also the most beautiful point. As I mentioned at the beginning, we had an exquisite sunrise this morning, and I realized that the night and the day also are representations of this cycle. The night, because you know the light is going to come, right? But it's dark, it's dark, it's dark, it's dark, it's dark, it's dark, and then at some point it starts to show, and it's right in that peak point where the night turns into the day that we see the most dramatic and amazing color spectrums in the sky appear. And then the light of the day comes, and the light of the day, the whole light time is represented by that integrative side of the healing process or the evolutionary process, because that's when the light of awareness is penetrating deeply and illuminates what actually is going on in this reality. It's very exciting. It's a very exciting part. So that's the whole day. The day represents this dive and then back into the silence of being for the night. And yes, it's also very beautiful at this junction here also has a lot of dynamism and beauty in it. It's a different kind of beauty than the beauty that we see at the sunrise. It's just beautiful. So this download for everybody, this healing for everyone's parasympathetic nervous system, we have the awareness on the parasympathetic nervous system. And presenting a download of these three values: expansion, purification, and integration, balanced for the autonomic nervous system. And what that means is other parts of the nervous system, other parts like of the brain, and like the memory areas and the different areas of the brain, the different areas of the senses of perception are like gearing up to recognize and appreciate the expansion and integration sides of the evolutionary process and just life experience in general, so that those are as equally dominant in the field of awareness as the purification side, as the purification aspect. Balance of 3 and 1. And what happens when we have these three values and we balance them? They recognize themselves as three aspects of the same form. So we come back to creating a 3 and 1 feature within the actual physical nervous system. And so that's the same thing that happens down here in the field of unbounded being, right? Is it starts to wake up to its own nature and it goes, oh, I am knowingness, knowing itself as knowingness. How? And it's like, then it rolls in on its own nature, and that's that roll, the is happening in the autonomic nervous system of the 3 and 1 value: expansion, purification, and integration. And all of them are super important and essential for the evolutionary process. So if life activity gets too much on the side of purification, then life becomes unhappy. Life is not as much fun, and we need to have fun. It's important because it's our bliss that returns into the ocean of being. This dialogue that I talked about earlier between the ocean of being, the individual desire and the cosmic desire. It's so important. How can you tickle the absolute if you're just not happy all the time? So expansion and integration are both bliss. They're both bliss. So you got 2 parts bliss, 1 part not bliss. And so, right? It's a human condition, right? And so balancing them. Beautiful, beautiful. Making sure that's kind of stabilizing. Some physiologies are making a light medicine that's kind of helping to stabilize that into the autonomic nervous system. It's really sweet. And I'm seeing that a lot of that is sort of coming from a little kind of transformation in the heart wisdom center, so that all the experiences that we come in through our senses are being mitigated by or modified by this more balanced sense of what reality is. It's all 3: expansion, purification, and integration. So beautiful. So beautiful. So that's for the lady who said it was yesterday. I was saying that we had some technical difficulties. Great. We had technical difficulties at the beginning yesterday, and I was freezing. And it's interesting that this lady's concern, the one who we've just been addressing through this healing for the autonomic nervous system, is that when things don't go well, she tends to freeze. And she said she thought it was really interesting that I was freezing and that she was also experiencing it internally, and then it was showing up in the external. And is that not the most amazing and beautiful example of Ritam? Ritam. Is it not? You experience it on the level of consciousness, and then it happens on the material level. It was perfect the way it happened, by the way, because I love you and I appreciate your question. And to whatever degree you were engaged with that. We were experiencing it together, just in slightly different ways, right? My nervous system wasn't freezing me. I was continuing to be verbal and various things, but the freezing did happen also at this end. It didn't happen to his computer. He had to come over and check. So what that means is that particular way, I knew it when like funny things were happening with the technology at the beginning, that this was the way the universe was showing us or illustrating Ritam. It was illustrating the way we manifest for everyone. It's so interesting. And I knew it was, but I'm like, does it have to do it that way? But it did it perfectly, because the freezing and then it shut down the Zoom call happened during the 3 minutes of silence. And I think my husband edited the thing so that it's smooth at the beginning and you won't see it that much. But yeah, it was during the 3 minutes of silence, and I had time during the 3 minutes of silence to reboot my computer. So everything worked out absolutely perfect. And there was no pain, there was no suffering from it, right? It was just like, oh, isn't that interesting? And I kind of had this feeling thought in the back of my mind, this is going to somehow surface at some point during this webinar and show us why it did that. And so here it is. Now it reveals. There, it's revealed. Well done. And thank you to the lady who had that experience and sent in her question, because look what we're doing together. We're doing this together. And was it my ego or my personal or your personal intention? No, being is just doing it like that. Like you guys deserve, as I said at the beginning of yesterday's session, and I promise I will add the Sanskrit term into the email with the links. For he who is awake inside, the richas seek him out. And the richas are the impulses of creative intelligence. So they were seeking us out, all of us together in our webinar, by illustrating and demonstrating how these experiences come to the surface. And then instead of being like terrible, they just knit their way into reality and become part of what makes this diversified field of expression so interesting and so beautiful and so amazing. Everything, even the worst of the worst. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to another question now. How are we doing for time? Yeah, we're doing good. Okay, so this is something that I was thinking about all along that I wanted to address, and I am grateful to you for the question. She's wondering if there's a way to support the movement of healing current political, social structures towards a more inclusive, supportive, and fair for everyone on Earth. I was putting attention on this. This was when I was saying before to myself, you know, universe, what do you want us to talk about? Of course, this was one of the ones that came up. And why? Because one of the things we do in this webinar is we work together as a collective. Okay, now before I described how a single individual putting their attention on manifesting something, they'll make a little loop that's down here and it'll soften up the environment. They'll make another loop that's a little higher and another loop of consciousness a little higher like that. And you eventually, after creating kind of a foundation for the desire to manifest, you know, it'll finally, when it's ready, when the foundation is solid, that desire will come forward. Well, when we're in a group, we do that really fast, right? Because as a group, each one of us is making a loop. I'm making a loop, and you're making a loop, and you're making a loop, and you're making a loop. And so it's like it rolls through the loops super fast. And as I mentioned yesterday, it's really important that we bring up desires that are big. We go for the long-term benefits, the long goals, the long life goals, so that all the little steps that you take will eventually lead you down the road to a much, much better place. And so I was looking through it was coming up, the history of humanity, and where we are right now in the history of humanity, and what a fascinating and amazing time that we all signed up for. And we know that improving this lot for everyone improves it for all of us individually as well. And with the power of our collective here, we've got quite a few people with us, and there will be more watching this video later. We work together then to create that wave of intention that supports the most graceful outcome to the period of time that we are in now. So it started thousands of years ago. Humanity realized that there was something dark in the story of the human existence. There was something that was rough, you know, painful, difficult. And so as a collective, humanity first got this idea, well, what if we could create a lamb so pure that it was worth the sacrifice? Right? What if we could have a soul come to earth so pure and so aligned with natural law that their presence on earth would help mitigate that darkness? And so you can probably imagine, you can think through history of some of the individuals who come forward, and the general pattern is that the darkness tended to eventually overpower them, and in most cases they became martyrs. So that didn't work. So then, as a collective, we thought to ourselves, well, what if we throw a lot of resources at that thing? What if we look into that darkness and we just get a lot of people coming in to try to eradicate that darkness from our world? And so this is something that we saw very much played out over like the last 100 years plus, 100 years plus, where we had collectives, whole generations of people that were born into this world who kind of threw themselves at that darkness. Like if we just blitz it, you know? And what happened was a lot of people became martyrs. A lot of people, like seriously bad, a lot of people died. And when all that was over, the darkness was still there. So then the next thought was, okay, well, what if we can't put a single sacred soul at it because it's not enough force, and we can't put everybody in there because they're not individually, as individuals, they're not at a level where they're able to make that work. But what if we turn our whole collective into a collective of sacred souls? And as a collective of individuals anchored to wholeness, then we address it. And that's where we are right now. That is like the point of where the collective of humanity on its it's a little flow that we're doing that covers the course of many, many, many generations of people. We're doing this sort of lessons for humanity. We could call it lessons for humanity. And just like the screen freezing yesterday, just like that. And essentially, for as far as you guys were concerned, I froze because my Zoom completely failed on me. I had to reboot everything. So I kind of, as far as anyone was concerned, I also froze. But did it stop the inquiry into the nature of what was going on and how to manifest? No, it didn't. In fact, we shut everything down during the 3 minutes of silence, and by the time the 3 minutes was over, everything was rebooted and we were ready to go. So the anchor to wholeness is the key here, that everybody who's participating in this process has that anchor, have that connection to totality. Nothing is unanchored from that. You might think, oh, well, I don't know how to get to it, and I'm not connected. What part of this is not connected to this? It's all connected. You may say, I'm not connected. I'm separate. God is there. I am here. I'm separate. No, it's all one thing. It's just one thing. You can say it till the cows come home, but it doesn't change the fact. But the difference is whether that experience is lively, right? Whether from the level of perception and experience, your experience is, I feel separated, versus those who might have the experience of, my experience is, I'm one, I'm connected and whole. Oh, and that leads me to an important point of this other lady's question, the one who freezes when she's not feeling well, she freezes. Okay, she said that I had answered a question for her earlier in an email, and she was wondering about this dynamic of conformity and belonging versus individuation and separation. Do you see how she's also looking at the same question that the other lady was talking about, but from a slightly different angle? Yeah, this is really, we have to straighten something out. It's a confusion. There's a confusion right here. So conformity and belonging on one side, individuation and separation on the other side. No. Belonging and individuation can go together. Because if you've got on one side conformity and belonging, then you've got belonging, which is something that is really, really good and really life-supporting. We've evolved over centuries from pairs of parents. Regardless of what the long-term pairing shows up like, the reality is that no one of us has anything in our ancestral makeup other than a mother and a father coupling together to give rise to offspring. That's the way it be. So this is essential, this belonging. There's something of belonging in there that is built deeply, deeply into our nature. So belonging, yes. Conformity. Remember the lady yesterday who said the message, oh, I did the exercise, it didn't work? Oh, she also sent another good question, which I would like to address here. I'm so grateful to her. What would I do without you? What would I do without you? Because that question opened up a whole bunch of refinements to that exercise that are going to really help everyone. And it also opened up for you that going back and realizing, oh, wait a minute, the exercise did work. So it's perfect. It's just perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah, conformity. There's this here we start really getting into politics a little bit, and I have to be extremely careful how I tread this path, because as we know, politics are so divisive today. Oof. So, but there's a sort of vision that's coming, I feel, that's being sold to the Western world of sort of something like the universal man. The individual who, because we meet on Zoom, and so you can meet people in all different parts of the world. And a lot of what makes life really charming in the material field of creation, and what makes families harmonious and charming, and what makes cultures beautiful is our differences. And you can have, a culture in Africa that only eats meat, and you can have another culture in some parts of India, say, that only eats vegetables, right? That doesn't eat meat. And those are both beautiful, and they're both important parts of our world. And you don't want to say, well, everybody should just be in the middle, right? Everybody should just eat some meat and some vegetables. No, that's not the way they evolved. If you try to make someone, someone who only eats vegetables and tell them, well, you need to eat some meat because we're all going to be kind of similar. We're all going to be all parts of the world is going to be kind of this sort of smoothing out all the differences. That's not good for people. And it's not good for our lives. We need those differences. We love the different ways that dance shows up in different countries, and music shows up in different countries, and the arts show up in different countries. We love the way people in certain parts of the world approach the evolutionary process, and then other parts different, because together we create a big, full-bodied expression of reality. So my point here is that separation doesn't have to equate with individuation. It doesn't have to equate with individuation. Separation, if we think of it in a more its more essential form, separation is wholeness. Is what happens to the wholeness when it starts to diversify and starts to express itself as the beautiful field of life around us. And as long as the parts are anchored to the whole, they support evolution, they support life, and they contribute something of real value at both an individual and a collective level. And any time that the parts are not anchored, they're not connected, they're separated, they know themselves as separated from wholeness, then, the effect is partial. It's partial effect. It's not the fullness, the full fulfillment of being. It's only partial fulfillment. Without going too much more into politics. Response. Two people are responding here. One is saying, I'm not sure we've evolved from the tribal us-them mentality. The appreciation of differences is a mature viewpoint. It is a mature viewpoint. But what is maturation? Maturation is more and more and more integration with wholeness, because that's a field of pure wisdom, pure knowingness. Can we have another healing to link separation and wholeness? Or maybe we want to say the parts with the whole, and it, in a sense, it gets rid of the basic premise of separation being that I'm not wholeness. If we define separation as not wholeness, right? Our lady from Hawaii is saying you don't get harmony when everyone sings the same note. Isn't that so true? Right? Our differences are our beauty, and they make us stronger. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, another healing to link, to somehow help bring the individual differences that people have, anchor those back into totality. I'm thinking, I like this lady because she often challenges me. And I mean, when I look at that, what I see is that part of that story has to do with further cultivation of the nervous system. Because as the nervous system refines and cultivates and integrates and purifies, that's part of the refining process, right? It's the purification. People just become way, way more comfortable with who they are and their differences, and also more trusting and loving of themselves and more trusting and loving of others. So that, as for instance, yesterday, so much time was spent on that exercise for wealth. And then the lady comes in and goes, oh, it didn't work for me. And I'm like, oh, but I didn't because I had to, the only feeling that I have with this particular person is so much adoration that it didn't matter what she said. I was just like, oh, I just want to just give you a big hug. That's all. I just want to give you a big mwah on the cheek, because I mean, just really, I just love you so much. And so, yeah, it's the differences. How would I ever grow and be able to bring out more knowledge to you if I didn't spar with my middle son? Whatever I say, he's like, no, Mom, you're wrong. And I'm like, okay, let's dive in on that one. And we dive and we find. So on that note, the lady who discovered that the exercise did work has a point. I didn't completely do a healing for that, my dear. I didn't do a healing for that. It's a big question, and we're like 5 minutes to the end. I feel the question, before I go to this other question, this question's so big, I feel as if it deserves more exploration on my part before I could really do it justice, if that makes sense. If you don't mind holding on it a little bit, let's dive a little more deeply into it. Let's dive into it in layers, shall we? Because it's with the layers, I think it's a huge thing. What you're basically asking me is, how can we recreate the core technology of Vedic science, which is the ability to transcend. I'm not in a position to be giving out that technology here on these live webinars. You need to check in with certified teachers. Okay, I need to go to these questions here. Is there a specific way to enhance the parasympathetic nervous system in order to enjoy the integration? Or is it automatic and we just need to observe? Yeah, great question. Actually, I have a link on my knowledge base that is an parasympathetic nervous system activation. Definitely, we should put that link in. And so it's just, there are 2 exercises, but the parasympathetic nervous system is, it rides on the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve runs all through the body, and it comes up to the surface of the skin, most in the face, and in these areas here, behind the ears, and down into the neck like that. So, oh, and also here in this part of the ear, this part. So if you look on my knowledge base, and we'll add the link to our list of links that we're sending you, you'll see some massage techniques. And I was doing that massage, but then I found for a while I was really regular. I'm not as regular now. I was doing these face massages too. And I found that always when I did the face massage, right after the face massage, I would just be sitting in parasympathetic bliss. And I realized, yeah, all that nerve is up here in the face too. Thanks, it's a good question. She's saying she will accept my hug and kiss and still would like to improve her finances further. Before we end, there's one more question that came in, and about the epidermal microbiome. I've also got some more questions here too, but I wanted to give you one more technique. I want to give you another technique that you can take home that would be useful for manifesting. And this one's for relationships, which is actually probably appropriate for the lady who asked about the epidermal microbiome. And so this technique it does two things. It helps to cultivate really healthy, really harmonious, copacetic relationships with people around you. And it also helps to refine the senses of perception, both of which are useful. One is that every relationship we have possesses a home deep within us. Now, it's easier to find the relationships that have been with you longer and that are more developed. So, if we take a moment and think of somebody that you know well, and put your attention on how your relationship with them feels to you, what's the kind of the nature of that relationship? And then compare and contrast to somebody else. What you'll notice is even in the same family, like with me, I have 3 children. So you think, well, I'm a mother to all 3 of those children, so my relationship with each one of them is probably basically the same. And it's totally not. Each relationship is really, really different. Each relationship has a different flavor or a different feeling. And in each one of those flavors or feelings, there is a space within my field of consciousness that is the home for that feeling or that flavor. And I'll send links on this one too. I used the term years ago, sacred gardens of the heart, which has stuck. But these sacred gardens, these sacred spaces exist between us and every person, everyone that we love. Oh, I'm feeling into the sacred gardens of the heart between myself and all of you. It's so sweet. It's so sweet. It's so sweet. It's so good. It's so important. You're so meaningful. So you have these sacred gardens, these sacred spaces that reside deep within. You can, when you put the attention, you put the attention, you can feel that space, that special space for each of the different people that you're connected to and associated with. And when there's a relationship that's not doing well, it's good to go into that sacred space. And then what I do is I establish silence in the center of the sacred space. And thank you. One of the ladies is saying she watched my video on it and it was really, she liked it. Thank you. I appreciate your appreciation, but I would like to add something more to that too, because I think you guys are ready to go deeper with it. So the first thing that I do is to find the sacred center of that space. There is a place in the center of that sacred space that you have with people that you care about, and even people you don't care about. And that center is where we connect back to being. That's where we anchor in to the source of creation. So I'm checking for everybody. All of us have sacred spaces that we share with lots of people, but we also have a kind of a template for all those sacred spaces. So we're kind of going into that more kind of universal template aspect of our sacred spaces. And we're saying, here we establish, the word in Sanskrit is Brahmastan. We establish the connection to totality, the silence of being. So luscious, so beautiful silence. There. Looking into the template of everyone's sacred spaces, stabilizing the Brahmastan. Stabilizing the balance that we had going before of expansion, purification, and integration also. So you could say it's like building a home for every precious relationship. It has these 3 parts: the expansion, the purification, and the integration. So the progress and evolution is naturally part of the relationship. That makes the relationship meaningful and fulfilling. out of this form that we've created, the Brahmastan in the middle, and then the 3 petals on each side of the Brahmastan for the sacred spaces of everyone's relationships. Such a beautiful light medicine is emerging. Such a beautiful flow from the fountainhead of being is coming up. It's like it's creating like a torus shape around the template for the sacred spaces, for the sacred gardens. So each garden is contained within a kind of a torus-like shape. And of course, the torus shape is prevalent, particularly at the astral level of the physiology. Oh, you notice we went through both of these webinars and we didn't even talk about the layers of the physiology. That's interesting, right? But yeah, the astral level, which is here, is still at the collective level of self, right? So it's within the collective field. So those sacred gardens, they reside here within the collective field of expression. The torus is there around every sacred garden. Thank you to all of you for supporting the expansion of this healing to go to humanity. It's a simple form. We've created a form on the level of consciousness, right? It's got a Brahmastan in the middle. It's got the 3 petals around the edge, the 3 petals responsible for the evolution and progress. And then the torus form comes around and it washes the whole thing. Right, right. So what lady who's kind of expert is saying the 3 petals proliferate into the torus, which is a lotus. Yeah. And we're giving it to humanity. We're giving it particularly to the Western world, but the whole world, because this crisis that we've been through 2020, 2021, whose name I will not mention, this crisis, it touches everyone on earth. So we're, as a collective, our beautiful, remember at the beginning of this healing for the sacred gardens, I was saying, oh, I feel like I'm looking in and seeing that sacred space that I share with each one of you. Now it expands to the world. It just expands to the world. And why? Because then we all found ourselves a common ground in those sacred spaces. And we're working with a template, which is like a universal form of those sacred spaces. And so it easily translates into a world healing. The whole earth, you know, with its magnetic fields, the torus shape around the earth. But what we're adding to that is the Brahmastan and the 3-petaled value. And those 3, the 3 are one. I talked about that before. The knower, known, and process of knowing, right, are all knowingness. And so these 3 petals balanced are really one. So it's not like, oh, well, in this part of the world, it's just nothing but purification. And that part over the world is nothing but expansion. No. Everywhere has the balance. Everywhere has the full balance. I'm getting a response from the world consciousness, and it's saying, this is kind of it's creating a kind of a unified foundation, but there's this concern about the individuation. So what we're doing is just now illuminating the cycle of creation, this cycle, especially the expansion part of it, because the expansion side diversifies and diversifies and diversifies and diversifies. The integration side is more of coming together side of it. But the laws of nature of the diversified side of that cycle brings us full circle. At the beginning of yesterday's session, I was saying that when we're talking about manifestation, we're talking about the expanding side of the cycle of creation. Right there. It's the expanding side. There's a reorganization of the laws of nature that's supporting laws of nature to become more prevalent or dominate, that support evolution. and progress. And when I say evolution, the goal of that being divine expression, the most perfect, whatever is going on down here in the field of totality, that it expresses itself most completely, most perfectly, most holistically up here at the surface level. Our world is ready to do that better, to express that divine grace more perfectly at the surface. It's definitely, there are a lot of layers to this, and one of them is that it's affecting the epigenomic patterning in the physiologies. I think I included those videos last time. There's the jellyfish video and the frog video. I'm pretty sure we can go back and check. Can we check that we included them last time? If we didn't, I'll include them this time. But I definitely feel that we're on the verge, if I was going to do a prediction for 2020, that we are on the verge of science actually supporting evolution in a way it never has before. Science redeeming itself. But as energy healers, we are looking directly at the way we influence our epigenomes with consciousness. And that's powerful. It could take science years to catch up. But no worries, we're already there. You're already there. It's through the feeling, And so just to do a little loop back, to return, I'm a couple minutes, a few minutes over, but to return to the exercise within the field of the sacred garden of the heart for each individual and each person, you can talk to that person. If there are blockages in communication in the day-to-day interactions, you'll find that you're working with their essential self when you're in that sacred garden. And from there, you can be very honest. They can be very honest. You get honest answers and understand their motivations. Everybody's learning something different. And the same experience will be, two different people will participate in the same experience, and they will get completely different lessons out of that experience. So your lesson, the important thing is that you focus on what you need to learn from the experience. If it's unpleasant, look at what you're learning from the experience and learn your lesson. You can look at that, maybe two people participate and something goes awry in that participation, and you can look at that person, you can say, I know what they need to learn from that. They're being egotistical, or they're being this, that, and the other. But it doesn't matter what they're being. It only matters what you're supposed to learn from that experience. And if you learn what you're supposed to learn from that experience, the problem of the interaction solves itself. And if they still have their problem, they can go have it with other people. But they won't be having it with you anymore because you learned your lesson. I hope that helps. I hope everybody has an incredible 2022. Thank you for sticking around with me. Everybody stuck around with me to the very end. God bless you. So thank you for that. And I love you all dearly, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of you next week. And it was just wonderful. It's wonderful to be with everyone. So take care, and I'll see you again soon. And join me again for another webinar if you can. I'd love to be with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.